What's up, YouTubers? So a lot of you have been commenting that you would like to know how I get my steel, or maybe prices that I pay, and give you guys a better idea of how to get cheaper material. So that's what we're going to be diving into today. Let's get into it. So in front of us here we have a bunch of steel. Came from all different kind of suppliers around me. A lot of the steel that I buy comes from like Menards or Home Depot, basically big box stores. And the reason is convenience. So if I go to a steel supplier right now, it's going to be potentially a 2 to 3 to 5 day wait to get my material. That's kind of a problem if I need it right now. Like, it's oftentimes that I have some free time and I'm like, you know what, I'll shoot a video to help you guys out. And I may not have the steel that I need. And because of poor planning on my behalf, I didn't have any ready. So, well, where do I get it from? Well, I can walk into Menards or Farm and Fleet or Tractor Supply Co., grab what I want, and then leave, and I can do a video. So that's awesome. The downside to that is, well, you're going to pay more per inch of material, or for the material in general, because of that convenience. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yeah, it's available, but at a cost. Now, the local steel suppliers, and I'm pretty lucky because I live in a city, a major city, and there's multiple to choose from. The only downside to that is, well, since Corona, they all take, 4 to 5 days to get you what you want, versus before it was like a 1 day, same day type deal. So it's just not as convenient. And then not only that, they are like on the outskirts of town. And I think that's just because of convenience to them being on the highway and whatnot, which means for me to get my material, I got to drive a half an hour or 40 minutes plus order it ahead of time. So you can see that, even though it's cheaper, there is a factor in there that plays into why I may not go that route. Now, with that said, what I found is, so when you go into like your big box store, your Tractor Supply, your Menards, whatever they have on the shelf, like they typically sell strips like what I have here, that's just what they sell, okay? You can't get like a discount on it or anything unless they're doing a rebate. Well, when you go to a steel supplier, they don't buy in 36 and 48 inch strips. They're, 12, 14, 18, 20 foot, maybe even more that comes in on a semi. So when you order your 36 inch strip, they cut it right then and there. Well, part of that process is everyone's order isn't necessarily the same. Like, you may get a guy that wants a bunch of 30-inch pieces, like 100 of them. Well, that means that they're going to have to cut it out of what they have, and they may be left with cutoffs, something like this, or shorter. And now these cutoffs, like, how many people are going to be calling up a steel supplier and saying, hey, I need, 100 3 to 5 inch pieces of 1/8 inch? Nobody. So these end up sitting in a bucket or a bin somewhere, and ultimately either sold for scrap price per pound or per ton, or depending on circumstances, you may be able to get some of those. Now, every supplier is different, okay? Some of them are going to have more cutoffs than others, but that's why it pays to form some form of a relationship with your local steel supplier. And what I mean by that is, no, don't take them out to lobster and steak dinners. Okay, well, I mean, hey, it may help you get some cheap steel, but what you need to do is you need to be a guy that they think of when they get an order and they have a ton of cutoff pieces. Because to them, this isn't really that valuable. It has worth. It's just to whom? Well, if you can come in and say, hey, I'm trying to learn to weld, I just need some cost-effective scrap pieces to work with, and I'll buy what you got, and I don't have too many requirements. Like, it can be scaly, it can be rusty, it can be a little bit bent. You're going to be a benefit to them by buying some stuff and making them a little bit of money on basically scrap. And again, it really depends on your supplier. But a lot of them, like, they understand, like, hey, people are trying to learn and teach themselves how to weld. And even though you're not doing a large volume with them, in the end, if they can be your supplier, get you what you need, down the road, if you get, say, better at welding, or you start running your own shop, you're going to be dealing with them as well, because you already have a rapport and business going with them. So for future business, I would say that it would be in their best interest to work with you. And in my personal experience, that's kind of what I've seen, because I've gone to some of the same suppliers over the years and they kind of know me by name, and I get deals that I guess aren't public, and I'm not even a licensed business or anything, and they know that, but they cut me in on deals all the time. And I get emails from some of them saying, hey, fire sale, check this out, we'll give you an even better price than this, come and grab some of it, because I help them out and they help me out type deal. So with all that said, I think you got a good idea on that. Let's look at some actual prices. So this is like a hodgepodge of prices from the local stores that I took a picture of or screen captured. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so I'm going to highlight some things and we're going to talk about it. So I'm going to decipher how to determine what we're looking at here and go through it with you fast so we're all on the same page. When you look at the red line, that says that it's 1/4 inch thick, it's 1.5 inches wide, A36. A36 is referring to a specific specification for steel bar, or it could be angle iron, any number of things, but A36 is a spec. And it's hot rolled, which A36 pretty much always is hot rolled, so that's mill scale, and then it has 48 inches for the length. Now the green one says 1.25 inches by 1/8, so this is thinner than the one above it, and it's 48 inches long, so it's the same length, but it's thinner. Now the blue line for $33 at Home Depot says it's 48 inches long, 1.5 inches by 1/4. So you can see it's kind of difficult to come to an understanding of what you're buying there just because it's labeled so poorly. And again, all of this isn't in metric, but the same thing holds true in your country if you use the metric system. Be wary of what you're buying. Now the yellowish orange line is A36. HR means hot rolled, flat meaning flat plate, 1/4 inch by 1.75 inches. So that's a little bit wider than some of the others. So hopefully that helps you decipher what you're looking at when you look at steel mills online, or even if they give you a sheet in their store, so you don't make a mistake and buy the wrong thing. Make sure that the measurements work for what you want. So now let's look at a little chart that gives prices. So here we go, the moment of truth. Sorry for the Microsoft Paint picture, it is what it is. So let's start out. Home Depot, all that information all comes down to 70 cents, so almost $0.75 per inch of material. We look at Menards, which is a big box store here. They're 27 cents per inch, so under half of what Home Depot is. So I guess the moral there is don't buy your steel at Home Depot. Now the two steel suppliers, Supplier 1 didn't have listed 1.5 inches. I know they can get it, it just wasn't on their site. So they're at 0.29 per inch, which is interesting because that's 1.75 inches wide. So they're still under half of what Home Depot is, despite offering a wider material. And it's barely above Menards, despite the fact that it's thicker material, or wider, I should say. And steel supplier number 2, 24 cents per inch. So you can see that they're actually not that much cheaper for that particular material than Menards. So Menards actually is selling for not that much higher than the local steel suppliers. Now keep in mind, these are their prices online. If I called up and wanted to buy 8 or 10 of them and asked for a quote, it would probably be far less than this. I would go as low as saying maybe 18 to 20 cents per inch for this particular product, 1.5 inches, 1/4 thick by 48. So again, it pays to call. So rather than just buying it online, call them and say, hey, this is what I want. I just want a quote. And they may quote it out lower than what these are. But you can see, you know, these are just a couple that I did. You can imagine the range is probably even more than this. Like I bet other box stores charge even more than Home Depot, and maybe another steel supplier would be less than these, but a pretty broad range, so it pays to do some shopping around. So what did we learn today? Well, we learned that there's a lot of ways to skin a cat per se, but no, realistically, it really comes down to your situation and what's available to you as to what the best option is. Now, there are ways to learn to weld cost effectively. Like, you don't want to be doing 500 fillet welds like this just to get good at fillet welds. So fortunately, you can do things like V-grooves where you set 2 plates like this and then you make a pass and then you weld it all the way out. Because realistically, the whole thing about learning to weld is more or less you have to learn to run a proper bead in all positions. Well, you can simulate that by doing exactly that in tons of different, positions on simple things like V-grooves and stuff. Now, when I was in school, we used to do something that basically amounted to an X, and I'll show you here. So this is a triangle, but you'd add another piece like this. It was like a cross, okay? So one more right here. And then you would weld this side up here all the way out until it was full and flush. By the end of that, and I did it with stick, it took forever, especially if you use 332 rods. For the cost of like $3 in material, you just, plus the rods or the wire and the shielding gas, you just literally did like a mile worth of welding and you got better at it because of that. So that's like an exercise you can focus on with minimal material to get good. And this is also something that I don't even know that I've ever mentioned on this channel, but it really holds true. If you get good enough at welding to where you can like successfully repair or make stuff, people will come to you. Friends, family, strangers, people will come to you. Your number will make the rounds and you're going to get calls in the middle of the night saying, hey, can you fix this? One of the great things with welding is that if you invest the time on the front end to get halfway decent, everyone else they're all going to invest into you to where you're not paying for the steel anymore. You're not paying for the consumables because you can charge them some money to help pay for all of this and for your time. And all of a sudden, you went from buying steel, a couple bucks a piece or whatever, however expensive you're paying, to you're essentially getting to practice welding while you're getting paid. So it's one of the few hobbies that I know of that you can actually have other people pay for it and you get to enjoy it. And no, welding under a trailer in the middle of a highway when it's 100 degrees out to fix a broken leaf spring hanger isn't exactly fun. And that isn't a hobby I would want to partake on, frequently. But I think you get the idea where if you can make money doing it, you get better paid. So you're no longer paying for any of this stuff, other people are. Same thing, like I said, with the steel suppliers, okay? You're gonna have cut off pieces from jobs. That's where some of this material came from, like this did. And because I have the cutoff, I can take it back and I can practice with it, and I charge for the whole piece because I might not have been able to get it down to the inch, or I had to buy more, an off chance I needed more and I didn't. So it's a great hobby in that respect because other people can contribute towards your hobby and it doesn't cost you that much. And that's something I'll mention kind of along with this, is that every welder that I own has been paid for by doing jobs for other people. This hobby stopped being a hobby a number of years ago for me. It still is a hobby in some senses because I don't really run a legitimate business, but long story short, it's paid for itself many times over. I mean, that's how I can afford a really nice Dynasty welder, is that other people paid for it, and it's awesome in that respect. So it's something to think of. With that said, hopefully you learned something. Until next time.